Every empire has its symbols. The Romans had the eagle, the Egyptians had the ankh, and today we have two of the most powerful symbols of all, the dollar sign and the board game Monopoly. But here's the twist. Both of these icons weren't born to glorify wealth. They were created to warn us about it. The dollar sign, a mysterious mark from centuries ago, carries myths of lost empires and Spanish treasure ships. While it represents freedom to some, it's the mark of greed to others. And then there's Monopoly, a game played by millions. But did you know its first version wasn't designed to celebrate capitalism? It was meant to expose its dangers. This is the story of how money's greatest symbols were born, and how their true meanings were lost to history. Join us as we uncover the secrets hidden in plain sight. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden histories. The mystery of the dollar sign. Two simple strokes and a curve. And yet, it is one of the most recognizable symbols in the entire world. It sits on banknotes. It flashes across stock market tickers. It crowns neon signs in the heart of Las Vegas. And it rules over the global imagination as the ultimate mark of wealth and power. But where did it come from? Unlike the Christian cross, the Star of David, or the Crescent of Islam, whose origins are deeply recorded, the dollar sign appears almost like a ghost in history. It has no single inventor, no single scripture. It simply emerges, and over time, it conquers. The first theory, the peso and the ghost of Spain. To understand the dollar sign, we must journey back to the 16th century, to the Spanish Empire, the first global superpower. From the mines of Mexico and Peru, Spanish galleons hauled silver across the Atlantic. So much silver, in fact, that the Spanish peso, the piece of 8, became the world's first truly international currency. Merchants, scribes, and bankers used the abbreviation PS for pesos. But in hurried handwriting, the letters began to merge. The S laid over the P. Over time, the P vanished, leaving behind a snake-like curve slashed by a single vertical stroke. This is one of the strongest theories of how the dollar sign was born. The Pillars of Hercules. But there is another story. One carved not in ledgers, but in myth. The ancient Greeks and Romans spoke of the Pillars of Hercules, two massive columns at the Strait of Gibraltar, marking the edge of the known world. On Spanish coins of the 1700s, these pillars appeared with a scroll winding between them, representing power and prosperity. When stylized, those two pillars with their ribbon resemble two vertical lines wrapped by an S. In this vision, the dollar sign is not merely shorthand, it is an echo of ancient legends, a reminder of mankind's endless quest for wealth at the edges of the earth. The American adoption. By the late 1700s, as the United States declared independence, the dollar sign had already spread among merchants and bankers in the New World. When the U.S. government officially adopted the dollar in 1792, the mysterious symbol slipped into official documents and coinage almost unnoticed. Here was a young nation, declaring itself free from kings and monarchs, and yet, it crowned its wealth with a symbol whose exact origin nobody could agree on. To the farmers and laborers of early America, the dollar sign meant wages, survival, bread on the table. To the new elite, the merchants and landowners, it meant power, profit, empire. From its birth, the dollar meant two different things to two different classes of people. To some, salvation. To others, dominion, the double-stroke mystery. But what about the famous two lines through the S? Why do some dollar signs have one and others two? Some historians argue the double stroke was a reference to the U.S. itself, two vertical pillars for the twin ideals of strength and stability. Others point back to Spain, saying the two bars echoed the Pillars of Hercules. Even more curious, in early manuscripts, there are versions of the dollar sign with three vertical strokes, almost like a holy trinity of money. Today, the double stroke lives mostly in art, logos, and design, while the single stroke dominates official usage. The symbol of desire and greed. As America grew, the dollar sign began to appear everywhere, etched into ledgers, stamped into coin molds, later printed onto banknotes. And with it, a cultural shift took place. The dollars was not just a symbol of currency. It became a symbol of desire. Artists and writers began to use it as shorthand for greed and corruption. In the roaring 1920s, neon dollar signs lit up the skyline like false idols. In the 1980s, Wall Street tycoons wore it like a badge of glory. And in modern pop culture, musicians brand themselves with it. From Keisha's stage name to Ty Dolla Sign's persona, the dollar became less about trade and more about temptation. A mark not of saints, but of sinners. The dual nature of the Khuris. What makes the dollar sign so powerful is not just its mystery, but its duality. It is at once the symbol of freedom, the chance to earn, to rise, to build a better life. And it is the symbol of greed, of hoarding, corruption, and endless hunger. It is carved on Wall Street skyscrapers, but also scribbled on a child's drawing of a dream mansion. It is painted by Andy Warhol in bright colors, both mocking and celebrating consumerism. It is tattooed on rappers and feared by the poor drowning in debt. The dollars is universal, both sacred and profane. The transition to monopoly. By the 20th century, the dollar sign was no longer just a mark of merchants. It was an icon of civilization itself. But just as the symbol of money reached its peak, a strange invention appeared on American dining tables. A game. A game with fake money, landlords, and endless deals. A game that seemed to celebrate the very thing the dollar sign warned against. That game was Monopoly. The secret history of Monopoly. Monopoly, the board game of money, property, and endless deals. Today, it sits in nearly every home. A colorful pastime of family nights, friendly rivalries, and childhood nostalgia. But what if I told you? Monopoly was never meant to be fun. Its original purpose was not entertainment. It was a warning. A parable dressed as a game. A message about greed, about inequality, and about the dangers of letting money rule all. A warning that we ignored. The forgotten prophet, Elizabeth Magie. Before Parker Brothers, before Hasbro, before Monopoly became a billion-dollar empire, there was one woman. Her name, Elizabeth Magie. A writer, a thinker, and a radical in her time. In 1904, Magie patented what she called the landlord's game. Her goal? To expose the cruelty of landlords and the way wealth concentrates in the hands of the few. She believed the system of land ownership was rigged, that ordinary people were trapped in endless rent payments while the rich grew richer without lifting a finger. The landlord's game was designed as a mirror of society, and it had two sets of rules. The prosperity rules, where everyone shared wealth and success together. The monopoly rules, where one player crushed the rest and took it all. Elizabeth wanted people to see the contrast, to understand how destructive the monopoly system was. The game was not meant to encourage greed, but to condemn it, the theft of a vision. For years, Magie's game spread quietly among activists, professors, and progressive circles. But in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, a man named Charles Darrow stumbled across it. Darrow saw the game not as a warning, but as an opportunity. He stripped away the dual rules, kept only the ruthless monopoly version, and sold it to Parker Brothers as his own invention. They marketed him as the all-American inventor who created a game of wealth from scratch. Elizabeth Magie? Erased, forgotten. Her prophetic message, buried. Monopoly, the world's most famous board game, was born in deception. What was once meant to teach compassion and justice had been twisted into a celebration of greed. The irony of Monopoly's rise. In the midst of the Great Depression, when millions of Americans lost jobs, homes, and hope, Monopoly became a sensation. Families who could barely pay rent sat down around kitchen tables and pretended to own railroads, hotels, and mansions. It was fantasy wealth in a time of poverty, an opiate of capitalism. The irony is staggering. A game that began as a warning against exploitation became the very symbol of it, teaching children to crush their siblings, bankrupt their parents, and rejoice in victory at the expense of everyone else. Monopoly as prophecy. And yet, In its corruption, Monopoly became prophetic, for the game always ends the same way. One winner, everyone else destroyed. No matter how many railroads you own, no matter how many hotels you build, eventually one player hoards it all. The others fall into bankruptcy, despair, and debt. This is not just a game mechanic, it is the logic of unchecked capitalism. The warning Magie tried to give us is played out every time the dice roll. The hidden messages of the board. Even the board itself holds secrets. Think about the spaces. Jail, taxes, utilities and railroads owned by faceless corporations. The constant threat of bankruptcy. Monopoly was not designed as pure fun. It was designed as a mirror, every corner reflecting the real struggles of society. When you land on go to jail, you glimpse the punishment that falls hardest on the poor. When you pay rent, you feel the weight of a landlord profiting endlessly. When you collect $200 at Go, it feels like hope, but it is never enough to save you from the crushing weight of debt. The global spread of Monopoly. From America, Monopoly spread like a new gospel of capitalism. By the mid-20th century, it was the world's best-selling board game. Each nation released its own version: London streets, Paris boulevards, Tokyo districts. In the Soviet Union, where capitalism was officially condemned, people still smuggled Monopoly boards, whispering as they played behind closed doors. The game became a paradox, condemned in theory, but irresistible in practice. Today, there are more than 1,000 editions of Monopoly worldwide, from Star Wars to Pokemon, from luxury versions plated in gold to digital apps played on smartphones. What began as one woman's cry against inequality became the universal language of money and power. The final warning. Elizabeth Magie's warning was clear. If we allow monopolies to dominate society, wealth will gather in fewer and fewer hands until freedom itself is lost. And so, every Monopoly game ends in silence. One player grinning in triumph, the rest in defeat. No balance, no justice, just the crushing weight of inequality. The real question is not whether you can win at Monopoly, it is whether we can escape it in real life.